Hola Miguel,
Hola, buenos días.
¿qué tal?
Bien, bien, ¿y tú?
Pues mira, justo respondiendo que me ha escrito Kate Anderson, que no sabía si iba a llegar o no iba a llegar,
Sí.
eh, pero me dice que tiene una compañera, Erika Clarkson, que dirige la unidad de Island Policy Unit in Scottish Government, que quiere participar y le voy a decir que sí.
Ah, claro, claro.
No sé si en este grupo, pero que participa en el proyecto.
Como veas, ¿eh? Si se quiere incorporar en este grupo porque no puede
Sí,
su compañera, pues, pues oye, por mí bien.
pues se lo voy a decir ahora mismo. Uy, estoy
Vale,
aquí, está grabándose todo esto, luego a ver si me pueden cortar este trozo.
vale. No, sí, sí. Oh, ah,
Ay, me voy a silenciar para que no me oigas. O sea, de momento nos quedamos así y cuando empiece la gente a entrar te voy avisando, ¿vale?
Vale, ¿tú a mí me oyes bien?
Sí, te oigo bien.
Vale,
Venga, pues me silencio para que no me oigas chascarrear ahí con el ordenador y
sin
seguimos.
problema.
Voy un segundín también al baño corriendo porque no llevo sin parar como 2 horas. Ahora vengo, ¿eh? Hola Miguel, voy dando paso. Está también Heather, ¿vale? Así que yo creo que vamos a hacer pleno. No te oigo. Ah,
Ahora ya me oirás, ¿verdad?
venga, perfecto. Voy dando paso.
Vale, de acuerdo.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Atanas.
Hi.
Well, I think we're still waiting for someone who's confirmed participation. I guess, Anna, did you speak finally with someone from Scotland who would maybe be here today with us or not?
Kate Anderson, she will try to connect today, but she was on the dentist, so I think that we can start and let's see if she can connect.
All right, so probably we should start right away.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
hello.
Are.
Are, how are you doing?
Fine.
Great. Well, I guess you probably read the questions I put forward a little bit to try to steer our conversation of today. We also set up that Miro canvas or whatever is it called to try to help for any reactions before our meeting. So probably later we can share a little bit what has been written on it, although the only one who has if I've well understood that platform, who has written something is Maite, probably from the government of Castilla-La Mancha. But anyway, we apologize because we came up with that idea of Miro canvas with a very short delay, and probably you would have needed more time to try to write down any contributions. But anyway, this is the real thing, the meeting where we are going to try to come to some conclusions on what should be considered to be an important reference to be taken into account when assessing the quality or the strength or the soundness of any rural proofing. I was working on the questions for the next group, and I had, and there's a question that I haven't put forward in the initial list, but it's about which should come first, securing a high-level commitment, or rather we should start by establishing a shared vision of rural areas beforehand. So probably this could be another question we could add to the list. I don't know what you think, because probably to convince politicians or general society on the need to rural proof, we should be starting by creating that vision, or at least that diagnosis. What do you think about it? If you have any ideas on this, or you may want, may prefer to go directly to the questions I suggested, or maybe just say something on your own initiative.
I can jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather. I'm in Canada. I've done work on rural proofing or rural lenses here in the Canadian context. And I think in terms of having a rural vision, if by that you mean ensuring that there's rural development policies or commitment to rural areas and understanding kind of what rural communities are facing within a particular region or country, I think that's important. Oftentimes, when we've done rural lenses or rural proofing in Canada, there has been some kind of rural agency or ministry in that government who is tasked with rural development, and would do some of that work in terms of getting the message out about what rural communities or rural regions are facing. And then the rural lens or the rural proofing exercises become part of the toolkits that they use to help mobilize that. So I often see them go hand in hand, and certainly having some kind of rural entity that can help promote having the rural proofing is definitely helpful. But the political commitment certainly needs to be there.
So how would you come to, in your experience, for instance, in Canada, to create an agency is sometimes taken as taboo, and particularly by governments that are very much careful about public deficits, and because you need to spend money to put people to work on it and so on. So creating political commitment is not obvious. It's not easy, I would say. We have the experience of Castilla-La Mancha that probably could be evoked on this matter. But also in Canada, how did you come to that conclusion? What was the motivation so as to mobilize all these resources? What's the key, the magic formula?
There was already existing infrastructure. So there was departments or agencies that were tasked with rural development. And then those were the ones that worked to initiate the rural lens. So often those were pre-existing, but I think where they don't exist, where you might not have a particular agency or entity that is tasked with rural development, sometimes what I've seen is the appointment of a minister or some other political appointment that is becomes the rural person, so to speak, who can help be that champion to push forward that kind of rural policy or rural lens.
Mm-hmm. So in Castilla-La Mancha, you have a champion, as you put down at the mirror canvas, your vice president. Is it the rural person Heather talked about?
Yes, we are a rural region, and we think in rural perspective every time. But in one point, in 2021, we began with the rural politicals more concentrated, and our first person, the person that have the rural problems in his head is the vice president. Vice president comes for a small town, and that is part of Cuenca, what is one of the not free with more problems about more demographic challenge. All of us know about it. In other part, the people that work in our office know the reality too, because Jesus, the commissioner, come from a small town that called Sacedón, that is inside Guadalajara. 2 inhabitants per kilometer in some of the municipalities of this nutres, and I'm part of the government that a small municipality, 22 person.
It's a little bit shocking from a scholar approach to get to know that the magic point to make things happen may be based on the biography of one single person who is enjoying the confidence of the president of the country beyond any, let's say, collective leadership or think tank. But we really should have to take this very much seriously when we come to assess. The problem is that people in democracies, stay in office and they go away, and the one to come after her or him might be not be that person. So this is also
this is a problem. This is a big problem.
problem.
But it's possible. It's possible that the next government change everything. Change everything. This another political party, and always happen. So you need to put the governments, or need to build a political with a lot of with the society with the stakeholders. The stakeholders need to stay with us in all of the process.
Because don't you think, were you, let's say, doing something to at least try to make it sort of consensus, so that no upcoming political party beforehand in opposition could wipe away with everything?
We make a law with the positive vote all the parties of the in our country, in our region. We made and it's our key, but I'm not sure about the future.
But your perception,
my perception is possible to continue because other regions of Spain copy our law. And the other regions are different party.
But we are looking also to Canada, because they had the rural lands scheme, and they no longer have it, at least not at the federal government level, unless I've missed something, Heather, on it.
Nothing publicly, no. At times we've been told there is still a rural lens that exists, but there's nothing we know of it being applied rigorously or anything that's publicly available.
Okay.
I put two things in the chat, just one on the Canadian Rural Secretariat and the rural lens that was in existence in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And then another more recent commentary that looked at one of the provincial contexts here in Canada within Ontario, in case that's helpful for anyone.
Thank you very much. Do you think we should, try to figure out any way of guaranteeing, if we can say so, solidity and continuity of a political agreement on rural proofing, and mostly engaging parties of different colors? Do you think that's possible, or it's just a one-person matter? Does anyone other than Maite and Heather make an opinion on it? What's your perceptions? Some of you are involved in governmental responsibilities. can guess that in Finland, there's a big consensus on the need to legislate in a way that is adapted to the peculiar needs or realities of sparsely populated areas. But has this always been the case in the past?
Hi, I was just thinking that in Finland, actually, we maybe have a I don't know if it is how different situation, but we don't regionally we don't make or we can make if we want, but at the moment, for example, we don't have a separate like rural policy or rural development policy program, but we have our regional development program, which includes also rural issues. So and that is governed by the legislation. It is obligatory for the regions to make such a development program every 4 years. And that is approved by the board of regional council. So it is like politically approved, but the preparation is done hand in hand with the preparation of the overall development strategy. So it is like very wide strategy, but or program, and of course then we have under that we have different kind of policies and programs, but that is something that is from the legislation, and that has been a long time already like that. So I don't even remember a time when that wouldn't have been so. So it has been regulated that it's an obligatory document for the regions, but the regions are very free to prepare it. So there is not there's no national handling on that. It's only regional handling and regional preparation and regional improvement of that. And connected to that regional development program, we have the smart specialization program. So they also go hand in hand. So they might not be prepared at the same time and not the same document, but they are like aligned with each other.
I see. So it's not the mainstream legislation that, let's say, makes the difference, but the way it is applied through regional development plans in each territory.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting approach. But in any case, no, there's not, let's say, anything special in order to build that awareness, to raise awareness on the need to adapt legislation or to design policies specifically to rural or the different rural areas.
No.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you think, Atanas, from the Bulgarian perspective? What would be what should be needed in, for instance, Bulgaria to try to build that strong commitment? What would be the points we should take into account according to your own environment?
Hello. We have regional strategic plan for 5 years, and it's a result of public meetings and discussion with local groups, local communities, and government. This is a step forward for our planning in rural proofing area.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Bulgaria is a very centralized country in terms of decision making. So is Finland, and I wonder what happens when any mainstream legislation has undesired side effects for regions that are undergoing depopulation or have a very sparse population. What is your, let's say, self-defense, if I may say so? What do you do whenever you find yourselves with a legislation passed by the Finnish parliament or government or the Bulgarian? What's the procedure?
Sorry, I don't now understand what you are asking. That what
Yes.
if our legislation comes from the government and it is what?
Yes, the thing is that whenever the legislation passed by the central government has negative side effects when applied to your territory, which of course has its own adapted regional development plan. What kind of reaction you have? What kind of dialogue? Do you have any let's say ways of calling the government and saying this has negative side effects? What do you do? Is there anything?
Yeah, I think that the only ways to react or the possibilities to react to that kind of situation would be to go via our regional members of the parliament. Also the municipalities in the region, they can like send their own opinion to the government and to raise that issue up. But in Finland, it is quite difficult if the legislation is already have come to force. So it's really difficult to effect in that phase. So we should be able to effect before the legislation is given. So there is quite vast hearing processes before when the legislation is prepared. So in our possibility to effect to that kind of legislation is in that phase. So in the phase of the hearing process to raise those issues and problems up and then to hope that they will change the proposal. But after the legislation is being given, so it's really difficult to have any changes in that moment. It takes a long time to change a law, even though it would be clearly harmful for some region.
No. What about other countries or regions? In which way you try to build consensus and strong commitment for in favor of rural proofing, first of all, and second of all, what happens whenever mainstream legislation has side effects? How do you try to redirect the situation? Anyone wants to take the floor?
I can come in on that. I'm sorry, I can't see how to raise my hand. We don't use Zoom very often in the Scottish Government, I'm afraid. But hello, everyone. I'm so sorry for joining late. I'm Erica Clarkson, and I am the lead of the Islands Policy Unit in Scotland at the Scottish Government. And my colleague Kate is also here, who looks after similar policy development work on rural mainland Scotland. But we have some slight differences in Scotland because here we have islands policy, but which is embedded in legislation. So we have the Islands Scotland Act, which we introduced in 2018, and within that we made provisions for island communities' impact assessments. Can I just check? Has everyone heard of those already? I don't wish to tell you things that you already know about. But basically that is a legal requirement on the Scottish Government and 70 external organisations to, in essence, island-proof all of our legislation, all of our strategies, all of our policies, and so we have a very well-tested process where we go out, we encourage our colleagues to go out at the very early stages of developing new laws or policies, where we have to get them to consult with communities in order to get an understanding of what the impacts might be, the detrimental impacts on island communities. And if indeed there is going to be a detrimental impact, then they have to, by law, change direction.
Who's responsible in Scotland for mobilizing that procedure whenever legislation is coming up?
ultimately, it's the Scottish ministers, so the government itself, because the legislation applies to the Scottish ministers. But so we have my team, the islands team, who are responsible for implementation of island proofing. And we do many things, but one of the things that we do, and I think we do very well, is to support the rest of the organization and the relevant authorities, and you can see those listed within our Act, when they begin the process. But ultimately, the people that have to carry out the island or the proofing, the rural proofing, which I think is your question, Miguel, is the policy teams responsible for that work. We don't do it for them, but we support them. But we're blessed because it's embedded in the law. So they have to do it. They have no choice. And that's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, let's see. But we are examining an area. I think you are asking for floor. Anyway, before I give you the microphone, because this group is about how do you buy that strong commitment, and it seems that in Scotland, all this happened in the 1960s. When an act created the Highlands and Islands Development Board, and a minister for Scotland said we had a debt with the Highlands and Islands and something like that. How came this to happen at that time?
Gosh, you're going back in time now.
Sorry,
just a bit before my time, but only marginally. So I can't speak that far back historically, but a couple of decades ago, the local authorities, so like our municipalities, came together to lobby government. So Linessa, there are 32 local authorities in Scotland, but only 6 of those have islands or responsibility for islands. My colleague Kate, who can raise her hand so you can see who she is, has a much wider, much more, many more local authority areas that she has to deal with. But for me, it's just 6. But they have very strong voices, very, very proactive, and see themselves as being very separate to other rural communities in Scotland. So they lobbied. They lobbied really hard, and that's where the law came from. If anyone is interested, there's a document, you can Google it. It's called Our Islands, Our Futures, and that board that you're talking about there, Miguel, is the one that ultimately resulted in Our Islands, Our Futures, which then became the basis for the bill, which then became the Act.
Wow, very interesting. Does anyone want to add or to answer the same questions? How do you think this would work in your region or country? Let's say building a strong commitment, a clear and strong commitment for rural proofing. Ari?
Just I was happy to hear Erika's voice, and we are also looking how Scotland is doing it. And in Estonia, where we don't have such a good system, maybe, and such good commitment, but working in the Ministry of Regional Affairs and Agriculture, also we have the Committee of Islands. There are different islands in Estonia. But in general, if to think about this OECD 12 different preconditions for knowledge-based regulatory reforms, and why the regulatory reforms are failing in different OECD countries, then in Estonia we have not very strong political commitment, but yes, the cabinet passed the memoranda on rural proofing. Also, we have quite good support from the parliamentary rural committee. But due to the latest cascade of different crises in Estonia and other countries, and the economic decline, I would say that the problem is not on the political commitment or on the law, but the problem is on the administration and how to implement those agreements. And due to lack of human and financial resources, I hope that we can create some kind of network between ministries and between also regional authorities and local authorities, But in everyday weekly work, of course, if some other ministry is initiating some policies, for example, in social policy or an education policy, then our ministry can make proposals, and also we can use the so-called red color to say that we are not approving. And then if we are not agree some proposals of other ministries, then the cabinet will discuss it. And we have this kind of mechanisms, and our ministry is quite ready to use this red pencil, if to say so. But yeah, now the most important now is the implementation in the ministries and on the level of departments, units who are dealing with impact assessment analysis, collecting data, and so on.
So beyond the limitations of budget or staff, if we focus on commitment building, would you tell whether it's rather due to let's say that champion within government or the politics in Estonia, rather than let's say the lobbying by local authorities or stakeholders?
I would say that according also the OECD, this regulatory impact assessment rankings, Estonia has very good position in ex-ante impact assessment, and also this regional impact assessment has been developed quite well. But this rural proofing is quite new and more specific. And I would say that it is for many target groups too abstract. We have to simplify it. And also now, for example, we have the interministerial working group on impact assessment, and we are trying to make some kind of marketing to the other ministries and to train them and to use the local data and to put all economic, social, or environmental impact assessment on the map of Estonia, to use the territorial impact assessment, this visualization. And if they don't have the data on local authorities level, for example, then we are trying to help them or initiate some ad hoc studies and so on. So
if I have well understood, in order to appraise the very nature of your efforts in Estonia, I would conclude that it is rather something that goes on as a result of a dialogue between local authorities and central government top rank officials. Would it be the case? Or it's rather some politician on top, let's say, motivating that kind of assessments and improvements in legislation in favor of rural areas?
Our Minister of Regional Affairs and Agriculture had a very good speech last year in the Parliament, and emphasizing that every draft law has to be this explanatory memorandum of draft law has include the regulatory impact assessment and rural proofing. If there is a difference between urban and rural areas. So, but it is a political statement, and also yes, we have the support, but due to other problems, economic problems, this war context in Ukraine and so on, the focus in society is now not in the regional or rural affairs, but the focus is in general economic problems and this EU problems and so on. And it is not. We are living in very hard times, I would say. So indeed, but of course, we are trying to train our partners in the municipal level, and the idea of this Interreg project is that we are trying to create interaction between local communities and the local authorities to press the ministries from the regions.
Okay. Well, in Finland, they have understood very well that this is also strategic policy for them, as they have that long frontier with Russia. Anyway, I would like to change now and ask Bernie her opinion on how is that strong commitment, desirable strong commitment that should give impetus to rural proofing. How is this built in Ireland, or at least in Galway County, or County Galway? Your microphone.
Sorry, yeah. Hi, everyone. Well, I was just listening to the Scottish colleagues there, and yeah, we also have an islands policy as well, our living islands. And I just sent a link there, it might be of interest to you. But let's say from top down, I work in local government. Now, in government, we have a Department of Rural and Community Development. And below that then is our rural future. And that's all to develop our rural areas. So then when we come down into local, we are actually all a rural authority. And we have a local economic and community plan together with our local policy documents. Now, there isn't a specific, obviously, rural proofing aspect to this, but our rural, the Department of Rural and Community Development, like the way, I suppose, they have committed to rural proofing and have done some studies on the background, but nothing has taken place as yet. But they have provided funding, let's say, specifically for rural areas that we implement by working with our communities, local communities. And they could be anything from public realm to developing trails to rural regeneration, vacant housing. They have a focus on all of this. So it's kind of being done, but not, it's not in law, or it's not been, let's say, assessed specifically.
So we could say that this is part of your, let's say, political culture to take care of rural and to have these departments and so on. But what happens whenever there's a, let's say,
we have that
legislation coming from Dublin, for instance, that could have side effects that are undesirable for your plans and actions? What do you do? Who's the champion?
Well, the champion is, I suppose, when, like, say, for the National Development Plan, in national government, they would do a roadshow. It's similar to Scottish or Canada, I think, I can't remember. And they go do a roadshow, let's say, around the country, and they listen, and they look for feedback. But that's it. But if the policy is implemented, it's similar. It's not. It would be difficult to change. But having said that, the pressure would come from local government would raise the issues, or the community themselves would raise the issues and bring it to the local TDs. They're our elected representatives in national government.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, to try and, have a focus, but we don't really, like, we have the national, regional and local as well. So there is, and the local area, the local plans as well. So it's just, there's no structure really for rural proofing. I'm not quite sure what assessments they do on a national level, to be honest. For if they're doing the the regional, the regulatory impact assessment, I would say they do that. But it's basically raising the issues locally, and they reach a higher level. And we're very small, really, the island, and the local TDs do raise those issues in national, in the Dáil.
Mm-hmm.
The voice is heard, but there isn't a structure as such.
Okay.
Miguel, may I just hop in there to respond to a couple of Bernie's points, which are really helpful? I'm so sorry, I can't. Unless anyone can help me, I don't know how to put my hand up in this screen. So apologies, I might just jump in.
Right.
First of all, Bernie, I just wanted to congratulate you on Our Living Islands. We've been working with your colleagues in the government for many, many months, if not years now, collaborating on island policy activity. And Our Living Islands is an excellent document. It's really nicely presented. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but you have it in English language on one side, and you flip it over, and then you have it in. Now you say Gaelic, not Gaelic. Yeah. Gaelic, yes. You have it in Irish, and they have a wonderful action plan to go along with it. So I would strongly recommend anyone interested in that type of policy document to take a good look at it. We're certainly using it to inspire our forthcoming new National Islands Plan. But just to make the point there about, if I may, that Bernie, you were discussing about community engagement and how important that is. Obviously, you don't have a huge number of islands and a relatively small number of islanders off your mainland. But by no means is Scotland like Finland. Our colleagues in Finland have got many, many, many islands, and Sweden also many, many islands, etc. But we do have 93 inhabited islands, and about 120,000 people live on those islands. And we take, across the whole government, we go to great lengths to engage regularly and carefully with each of those communities. So my team will go to, for example, there's a small island called the Isle of Ewe, which has one family, 5 people. We'll go and we'll meet with them. We'll sit around the kitchen table. We'll have coffee and we'll talk about what's important to them on their island. But part of our island proofing guidance is very much focused on community engagement and consultation. So we strongly recommend to all of our policy colleagues and all of our relevant authorities to go out and speak to islanders in the best way that they can. Often nowadays that's virtual because it means it lifts up and allows for more engagement. More people can attend if we have virtual meetings than if they often if we're on one island, the neighboring island can't get to it because the ferry's not running and all of these other issues. But we do that very carefully. And also within our Act, within our Island Scotland Act, there is again a provision within the law that requires Scottish ministers and the Scottish government to actively engage and to actively communicate and to consult with islanders on the issues that will impact on them. So I keep hooking it back to the fact that we have this wonderful law which makes all of the difference for us. But yes, community engagement is super, super important.
Yeah, and from a local perspective, in line with that island plan, any funding streams that we apply for, we must include the islands, so, and work with the islands to develop projects. This is from the local perspective, to ensure that they, because that is our only source of funding, really. You know what I mean? So we actually apply for that funding in cooperation with the groups on the islands, based on what their needs are, as best we can.
Thank you. And I would obviously an open invitation from myself, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of Kate when I say if anybody wants to come to Scotland at any time. We've got some colleagues coming from the Finnish governments in the next few months. We have a network called the European Islands Policy Network, which we've recently established through a memorandum of understanding with Croatia, Finland, Ireland and Scotland, and colleagues would be welcome to come along at any time to hear discussions within that forum as well.
Actually, could I ask, who is your contact in the Irish government? Because I'm very local, you see. So
let me pull out the name for you. 2 seconds. You guys carry on, and I'll get that for you now.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm impressed with Scotland and its policy. I don't know if Kate would like to add or something or make any comment.
Yes, sorry. Well, my first comment is I'm thrilled that I managed to get Erica to come along to this, because she is really well placed to talk about the kind of legislative element of what Scottish Government is doing. My position is somewhat different because the legislation we have only applies to our islands and has a lot of things in there that are really, really useful. My team deals with mainland rural Scotland, and in many ways, some of our remote rural communities have very similar issues to those on islands, more so than they do to the more kind of accessible rural areas in Scotland. But we do not have that legislation to kind of enable that degree of rural proofing to take place through all policies. And we're working on alternative methods of kind of mainstreaming rural proofing throughout Scottish Government for the whole of rural. But it's a very different picture without that legislation. So part of the reason I was so keen to come to this panel, as well as my one that's later on, is because my team have developed some guidance that is a bit like a rural impact assessment, but it's not statutory. And one of the concerns that I have is, while we've got lots of feedback that it's very clear, helpful guidance, if it's not a statutory tool, how do we encourage that take up if we've got lots of colleagues who are pushed for capacity? So seeing that kind of, if you can't make something mandatory, make it statutory, what can you do and what are the effective methods to do to kind of work with colleagues to bring that into normal general practice? So that's kind of my positioning on this.
Thank you, Kate. Well, I don't know if Serafin is there. I would like to add something from his expertise and knowledge of the issue.
Hello. Yes, thank you. I mean, I was just as there was an email that invited other colleagues to attend various sessions. My apologies, my connection is very bad. We changed Wi-Fi here in my village as I'm spending a few days back home, and the provider is worse than what we had before. I mean, I think it's quite a very realistic assessment that if rural proofing it can be off to a good start, but then sustaining it over time and over the changing of periods, unless it's in there is like infrastructure in place, is very difficult to do beyond our desk research exercise. So I mean, for historical reasons, I'm pretty well aware of the Scottish model, as I was.
I'm afraid it's gone. Well, let's see if he can rejoin us and see if we can have his opinion. It looked to me that, if I've well understood, that he suggested that probably some sort of permanent infrastructure will help give continuity to any strong commitment that may have been built in the past. So yeah, I think that's an interesting point. At least provided that infrastructure has had the opportunity to last a little bit. I don't know if for 4 years or 1 decade or so, but at least something that is in the landscape whenever anyone takes office. To me, it's a very suggesting idea. I don't know what do you think about it, but yeah, that may have also some kind of or give some strength to that continuity if there's not a sufficient enthusiasm of the governing party at each time on this question. So I would like to, if you don't have anything to add to it, and well, waiting for or as Serafin tries to come back to us, I would like to ask you on the formula for consensus. It was very much stressed the importance of the involvement of civil society, and to me that's a little bit the opposite conception poll from, well, one person who is the champion from top, and what could be the ideal scenario? Because one can be starting the whole process by just getting to power and making things happen, at least for a legislature, but getting to that commonly shared vision with a lot of stakeholders, each one telling their own story. How can you manage it? I mean, in the islands of Scotland, maybe it could be more manageable, but when you have a vast region like Castilla-La Mancha, this could be difficult, or Canada, for instance. Do you have any direct experience on this situation that could enlighten us a little bit on how to make things happen from bottom to top and top to bottom at this early stage of creating that commitment?
Sorry, Miguel, was that question targeted to the group or to us specifically?
It's just to the group. Is any one of you can give your opinion or whatever. And if there's no ideas on it.
Maybe I can say from Lapland point of view, we have a vast area and very sparsely populated area. Lapland is about 100,000 square kilometers, and we have like 1.8 people living per square kilometer. So that is something that is also we are very familiar with that issue, but on regional level, when we are preparing programs or strategies, so normally we arrange both online and on the spot meetings in order and to invite very wide variety of different kind of stakeholders and groups to participate. So that's of course the main way of getting people involved, but of course understanding also that not everyone can participate to those seminars or discussions. So then we also arrange like hearings where people can comment in writing, so they can comment the documents and comment the preparation and so I think those are the main ways to do that. And I think also that is also happening quite in similar way on national level, if we have some national level programs or strategies or plans, so that or legislation also. So it is also so that they are arranging from the ministry mostly online webinars on the issue where people can ask, and they are telling the main issues and people can ask, but then there is a written hearing process also, which is it is set in the legislation that we always have this like 30 days hearing has to be arranged if there is a new strategy or program or legislation in the preparation. So those are the main tasks for us.
So would you recommend from your perspective, either face-to-face or online, would you recommend to any champion, a newcomer, to develop, to institutionalize in some way that conversation with stakeholders and local authorities to create that vision and consensus, long-term consensus?
Yeah, well, if it wouldn't have any obstacles, so of course we would recommend face-to-face meetings. We quite often organize different kind of workshops when we have these meetings. So then people are preparing their proposals and opinions in smaller groups, for example, and so. But that is not always possible because of the size of the region and the sparse population. So it's not always possible, because if we wanted to reach all the stakeholders that are interested, it would take so much time and resources from us that it's not possible to arrange. but we try to arrange those events in bigger areas, bigger rates, bigger municipalities, and so that and then in addition to that, then to also to have online meetings and discussions.
Any other opinions on this?
Sorry, I can't find the hand either. Sorry, Miguel. But I was just wondering, as we were all talking there, for every plan and every project, pretty much there's a consultation process in it. But I still feel that, you know, there isn't like we don't have a responsibility for transport. You know what I mean? Public transport, right? That kind, you know, but we do under our local economic and community plan. But what I'm trying to say is, I wonder, is there like in municipal areas, should we be just in municipal areas in each local authority? Should they nearly have their assessments? You know, because on the terrain there and what the requirement is. Like we don't have, let's say, a plan, or we have local area plans which determine, you know, zoning of land and, you know, facilities and that kind of thing. But it's impossible to reach everybody, really. And each areas are so different. Is it a question of dividing it up by municipal area or mountainous areas? I mean, the islands, you know, there's particular. So I actually don't know the answer to the question, but I'm just thinking as aloud, you know, in relation to housing is a big issue here in Ireland, provision of housing. And a lot of people want to live in rural areas. Now, the overall national thinking is they want to move much people, they want to move. The idea, well, more or less, is to try and keep people in settlement centres because of, you know, transportation and links and all of this. And there's a big, the government have been re-looking at the Planning and Development Acts, and there's a new one being developed at present, the revising all of this. But there is an area out in Connemara, for example. It's a highly scenic area, and you know the population isn't high, but it's a lot of people they cannot build on their own land. Just an example. So there has been a kind of a group trying to raise this issue that people want to live, you know, close to their family. And yet our planning laws do not really, you know, facilitate that. Only it's restricted, put it this way. And there's also a restriction there to protect the Irish language. So there is language clauses. So you have to be able to speak the language because they want to protect the language. So it's just of late, there's a lot of people demanding, and it's been raised nationally as well, that, you know, where people want to live closer to home, to move back. So that's kind of just an idea of a problem, you know, locally and a national policy.
Mm-hmm.
But
so,
yeah,
you would say that local governments rural proof adequately in the matters of their competence, and that central government, when managing their competences, should be more rural proofers because they are far away local realities, or not in Ireland?
There are many things that come into the equation. You see, when you're talking about planning, the environment is a big consideration because a lot of that area is protected as well, you know. So, you know, so it becomes a bit more complex. But there is, you know, the conversation has started about people wanting to be able to live in their own area and with less restriction. Mm-hmm. But yet it is under the present planning acts, you know, the government basically want to protect the Irish language. So they're not going to let somebody you know, they have to be able to speak the language, they'll be interviewed for that. I'm just trying to show an example of kind of the complexity of that. And that's national, you know, the planning acts, you know, are national, and yet the planners have to implement the national. And if that's, you know, then people just raise the questions again. So I suppose it's been re-looked at, you know. That's just an example. I don't know if any of you have experienced any of that.
Okay, Erica, please.
Muted. Yep. Spotted that again. Just familiarizing myself with Zoom. It's a new every day is a school day. Benny, thank you. Some really interesting points. And yes, I'm sure that Kate will agree that our planning system is perhaps not entirely fit for purpose for our rural, remote and island communities. So it's an area of focus for us. But I just wanted to, hopefully I'm addressing the point. Forgive me if I'm not, but within our legislation for islands, and I emphasize again that this is just islands, there are a couple of clauses within the law that allows local partners to request a retrospective impact assessment. So if we have a law or a process like our planning processes that came into place before 2018, people in the community can ask us to island proof that. And if it's not deemed to be suitable, or if the outcome is going to have a detrimental impact on island communities, then we have to change it. There's also another provision within the law, and I feel strong, Kate knows this, we talk about it often, but if you can embed this stuff in legislation, it will make life a lot easier. So the other provision we have that Bernie may be interested in hearing about is the one that allows our local authority partners to challenge an impact assessment that the government has completed. So an example would be recently there was a proposal to bring into law a ban on wood burning stoves. Do you know what perhaps colleagues in warmer countries don't know what those are, but in Scotland, lots of rural homes and urban, but lots of island homes have a stove to burn wood, or rather fuel, and there was a proposed legislation to ban that, and that was challenged, and the law was changed. So the provision to ban wood burning stoves in rural and island communities was scrapped.
We have the same debate right now in the EU because we have a directive also that goes that way on these lines.
Interesting. It's interesting, but the only reason why I feel that we were able to make a positive change was because of the island proofing laws, and I feel like Kate is of my poor relation because she doesn't have that weight behind her rural toolkit, and she's relying on goodwill from colleagues to carry that out in an already busy environment.
All right. Well, Ari?
Yeah, I can remind me that once I had a study visit to British Cabinet Office and DEFRA, and I understood that it's ideal system also for small Estonia, many times richer, but to the reason that this system of regulatory impact assessment and ex post impact assessment and the results of ex post impact assessment as a material for policy learning, understanding what's going on, and also the impacts to the public sector, impacts to business sector, and impacts to third sector, in budgetary terms. And we don't have this kind of resources, but I think that also this public report on the policy outcomes, it would be also in our institution building one of the key issues to learn what's going on based on the data. And I would like to add maybe another aspect also, and then go to I'm also the coordinator of civic engagement in my ministry. But Estonia is very small, like a big village in comparison to bigger countries. But I would like to emphasize also that an idea is we would analyzed this multi-level governance in EU on EU level, that I see that the EU actions will influence the Estonian policymakers, and for example, Rural Pact and so on. And also EU is trying to influence the local communities and civic organizations on grassroots level, so that to create interaction between grassroots level, national level, and EU level. And this mix is quite interesting. So, but going to the how to involve civil society in Estonia, there are many small studies, and also we see that local communities and also they are tired on so-called participation and involvement, because they don't see the real impact, and it is the problem. And now, how we can improve the situation, and one of maybe the main ideas for me is, as Bernie described, what are the most actual problems for local communities and local authorities, and this real problems for local communities will also mobilize them, and then we can start some kind of discussion, and then also what kind of problems we can solve in cooperation with local municipalities, one level, what kind of problems we can solve in cooperation with ministries on state level and lawmaking level, so that this interaction between different levels. But yeah, what kind of problems will mobilize our local communities? It is the question in our countries, and what kind of data we have to reflect the situation.
Thank you, Ari. Well, we're writing down at least of the ideas that you are expressing, and hopefully we will have to come to several conclusions. This is a first phase of the project, whereby we try to identify the main questions to be taken into account for assessing rural proofing schemes. And now I would like to take a look at what we have in our Miro canvas and see if there's something that you'd like to add or comment on, or whatever you may deem fit for our purpose. So Anna, I don't know if we can share the screen and try to make.
I've been added some ideas while we were working. I'm not sure if I got everything right, but I've been just putting some of them there.
I see. Well, we can read some ideas linked to the question of how could a sound political commitment be built around rural proofing. It's about rural proofing sustainability, we could say. And I have a first note here, bottom up. So yeah, this is a little bit the two aspects, champions or bottom-up approaches by stakeholders, civil society, local authorities. If we look at the first post-it, we can read, it is necessary to have a high-level commitment so that the policies facing the demographic challenge reach their greatest deployment. In our case, and I guess this is Castilla-La Mancha, they reside in the figure of the first vice presidency, who holds the coordination powers for the entire regional government. But the problem is that governments and politicians change and may no longer believe in rural proofing, as it happened in Canada. If we go on, about this question, someone says to create a specific particular agency to achieve this political commitment. That's a possibility. To avoid perhaps the problem, governments and politicians change and may no longer believe in rural proofing. Well, an agency, a sort of infrastructure or permanent structure that would at least try to guarantee that some level of political will is maintained throughout governments. Another opinion, lobby to raise one issue up, lobby from local authorities, strong voices, like in Scotland, is island proofings, dialogue. I think lobbying will be permanent in all stages of any rural proofing system. If you want to add anything, I will just invite you to take directly the floor and speak out. So we have also the problem and new and too abstract. This is new and too abstract for some target groups, and also the lack of data to create that vision or that diagnosis, which is previous to any political commitment. So we need to take this very much into account. Train policymakers, training, and create interactions or force interactions. Yeah, that's something absolutely relevant, important. Actively engage of rural communities, like in the Scottish Islands. Engage rural communities, of course. That really fits into the same idea of stakeholders involvement. Any opinions on this, or? If not, I will. Kate, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking that one of the things that we're trying to do, we currently have a Rural Scotland data dashboard that was published just over a year ago now, that brings together lots of data about the kind of challenges and experiences of life in rural Scotland on a number of policy levels. And that's proved to be a really useful, really popular tool for all of our policy colleagues and kind of communities and stakeholder groups. And we want to continue expand the data that's held on that, so that we're bringing together more and more nuanced data. But the fact that it's quite public means that we have an ongoing opportunity to flag where there are particular challenges, particularly where they're quite entrenched and have been going on a long time. And it provides that kind of focus for ministers to put more effort and more focus on those things. So kind of having more data, more public data that is very clear about where the issues are and what we might do is a really useful tool.
Thank you, Kate. And Erica would like to add something.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I dropped out there for a second, so I missed some of the conversation, but I just put something in the group chat there to say that we looked at that agency model when we were developing the operationalization of our island communities impact assessments. And I'd be very happy to come back to the group, and I'd have to dig out some documents and some go into my memory, but come back to you as to why we ruled that out. But also on the data, Kate is so hot on the data. So if you guys need anything from us, don't ask me, ask Kate on data. But I would be very happy if it was at all helpful to bring my colleague Lewis McCaskill to a future meeting. Lewis looks after our island proofing policy and knows it like the back of his hand. I don't know if that's a saying you use in your countries, but he knows it very, very well, and all of the intricacies. And he would, I'm sure, be happy to give a presentation about that. And also just from some other learning that I've had recently, just to flag that in you may have already discussed this, but in New Zealand, they do some very good work around rural proofing. You're nodding, so you know about that already. Okay, great. That was all from me. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. We will be pleased to have her in and listen to her qualified opinions and knowledge on the issue. We try to have also representatives from New Zealand, but we realized that at least it was to be very difficult for them to get connected at their times. But we'll keep an eye on what they do and what they know. Let me proceed with the next questions as suggested. Should it be prevented from forming part of the electoral programs of political parties? And there's one answer that says no, it must be included in the electoral program for each party so that citizens can know who puts these issues on the agenda. I see that this is risky as well, but because there's also the tempting tendency to say the opposite what the political rival proposes in order to mark their own political space. But in any case, this is very much horizontal issue, so as to think that electorally this would be the object of very harsh and contradictory disputes, at least before the public opinion. I don't know if you think in a different way or you have a different perspective that I'm missing on this. If not, I would go on to the next issue. What components does this commitment have to have? Budget, human resources changes, administrative organization, and so on. Anna, you point to the electoral program must specify whether regulations or strategic planning will be carried out. That links to the previous question, but probably political programs also have an impact on the commitment to have budget, human resources, maybe an agency. By the way, you have an agency, keep it away from Elon Musk's policies. Well, just joking. Anyway, a permanent infrastructure, human resources, it's seen as necessary, but some of you and also local and regional authorities versus central government. That means that some kind of consensus on the commitments and the components of these capabilities should have, if I understand well. But if anyone wants to add or comment on this, welcome. Erica, please.
Sorry, I'm conscious that I'm speaking a lot, but I promise I'm coming from a position of some experience and learning over the last
we appreciate
few years.
very much.
Okay, great. So just on this theme, Anna, I'm wondering if one of the components needs to be political. So we have our own cabinet secretary, so a senior minister within the government who is able to champion at a political level with her colleagues this agenda. So as part of a component to the commitment, obviously resources, human resources, we also have on the island side a dedicated team of people whose day job involves doing this. So that makes a big difference too, but you've already captured that. But I do think maybe there's something about a political figure being a champion for this.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go on because we're some 15 minutes. We have some 15 minutes before we finish. How could the degree of priority given to it on the political agenda be assessed? How could we determine whether you're telling the truth when you said you will rural proof and put all the means needed? And one of the answers goes establishing mechanisms to account for results in parliaments. Very interesting, mechanisms to account. So given reports, audits, and so on in parliamentary sessions. Any opinions, any comments? If not,
Just very quickly, sorry, Miguel, but Anna,
yeah.
just one thing you might want to capture is having people publish what they do.
Oh,
Because if it's published, so we require them to publish it on their websites. We have to do the same for ours, and then everyone can see what you're doing. It's very transparent.
okay, reports and all what can be scrutinized by public opinion in society. Perfect.
And I would add the oversight system, feedback system in general.
Feedback, giving feedback. It's a way to test.
Or quality check of impact assessment data.
Okay. Good. Let's see what's next. So what is the formula for building a permanent or long-term consensus in favor of rural proofing that everyone could take ownership of? And answers we have: carrying out participation processes of both civil society and the different political parties in the development of regulations or planning so that valid conclusions can be drawn for everyone. Participation processes. Good. Then to construct solid interactions between grassroots and region and national authorities. Solid interactions, sort of inter-institutional dialogue, I would call it. Do you have? I think you have depicted some things of the sort in Scotland, and you will probably may have some as well in Ireland, if I'm not wrong, Bertie. What's the role of civil society? What's the role of the media and public opinion? And answers: in our opinion, planning without the collaboration of civil society is impossible because its contact with reality is the closest. And it's that makes sense to everybody. And also, yeah, the same thing or in the same line, consultation and participatory processes. In Finland, involvement of civil society through online and face-to-face meetings like workshops, but it has limits, sparsely populated areas. Another example, well brought about, New Zealand. So next question, if there are no any further comments, what other actors and factors should be taken into consideration when assessing the solidity of the construction of political will? And the answers we get are: you have to know that the situation of the country to which you belong and even international politics can condition your future policies. And that's why you must have the flexibility to modify your programming and adapt it to the problems or solutions that arise. As an example, COVID and the recovery program. That's a good example. And of course, interaction between different levels. That will be probably, a constant in our analysis. So next, oops, let's see if I can read it. Yes. How should it be explained to society and to those who are going to be directly involved? Ari mentioned that participation fatigue. Governance is very important, as well as direct contact with society, traveling a lot to these territories, explaining their regulations and their advantages, as well as being able to learn about the problems that the closest inhabitants and leaders encounter in their daily lives. This is costly. So it is something to explain very well, to convince people that it's worth the investment. Someone, I think, is including another aspect, participation fatigue. Next, oops, did something wrong. Next issue, next question is suggested: how could the degree of commitment of a government can be assessed? I think we spoke of it before. In our case, we are going to carry out 2 intermediate evaluations of the strategy against the population to observe how it is developing and the actions that were established. Intermediate evaluations. I imagine that they will involve experts, government officials, and stakeholders. If so, I will say it's very positive. And the last question I suggested, and you can add any other questions if you want to. How could the public commitment of a prime minister or a specific minister be assessed? In the case of Castilla y León, I imagine we have a portal of government commitments, a public document signed by the government council, and of which compliance is monitored commitment by commitment. And you can have a link to the web of Castilla-La Mancha to give the proof of it. So yes, transparency, accountability, monitoring, reporting, a combination of these different means would be ideal and should be considered when assessing the quality of that commitment to carry out, to carry on rural proofing schemes. So I don't know if you have anything to add to this. Probably we will have this open, this Miro canvas for a few days or weeks yet before we gather all the information and the information we have also had in this session to take the further steps in our project and to put things in common in the next meetings. So if you don't have anything else to add, I will consider this meeting finished, and only would like to give thanks to every one of you for your participation, your valuable contribution, and look forward to meet you again soon, and of course in Cuenca in the month of May. So please take care of yourselves and be happy.
You touched many wicked problems, so thank you.
Thank you.
you. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.
Bye. See
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye, Are.
Bye.
Miguel, si quieres cerrar la reunión y hablamos ya por privado.
De acuerdo.